Well, we have finally made it one sleep away, 24 hours away. 4 months of work has led to this. The Cleveland Browns and the 2025 NFL Draft are just one day away. Some final draft thoughts here on Browns 3D, which starts now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Your daily delivery of all things dog pound. Browns 3D on the OBR is brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. Um, Definitely, it's got the feel now, knowing we're just 24 hours away, one sleep away from it all beginning. Round one, Thursday night, Green Bay, Wisconsin, for the 2025 NFL Draft. All of us here at the OBR appreciate everybody who's been along with us for the last few months, going into this off season, going into this draft season, reading all the written content coming out nightly for the OBR streaming network, starting with Browns 3D every night at 6 o'clock. 7 o'clock tonight, you're going to have a special. Brad Ward did a great job. All of us sat down, gave 3 minutes or more of our opinion, just exactly how the Cleveland Browns should handle pick number one. Brad sliced it all together, and you guys will get that tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to try to record something in the morning. That's the goal. Hopefully, I can connect with Pete. We're going to get some of our final general draft throws out there. That'll go up hopefully for 6. We'll see you all at 7. And again, we will be live streaming the entire 2025 NFL Draft Thursday night, Friday night, all day, Saturday. Spend your draft weekend with the OBR. Now for the Browns. Now, look, I mean, there's not one mock from anybody in the game right now that has my guy, Abdul Carter, going number 2 to the Cleveland Browns. It's almost a consensus across everywhere that it is Travis Hunter at number 2. Most of them have Abdul Carter going to number 3 to the New York Giants. I'm not gonna wave. And first things first, what respect would you have for me if I did at this point? And all of a sudden I became a team Travis Hunter guy, right? Come on, stop. You know you wouldn't. Um, Again, I am my job is to analyze. My job is to give my opinions. You guys know where I'm stand on this. You know where I'm at on this. Um, Still holding out a slight hope that Andrew Berry is maybe, having a little fun with everybody, because he hasn't really gotten to play the first round dance in years. Has never had a pick this high. So hoping maybe there's still, a rabbit out of the hat. And in my opinion, the Browns come to their senses and draft Abdul Carter. And, what would be more fun than Myles Garrett? A guy who's even faster than Myles Garrett. We'll see. Again, we will see. If it does indeed turn out to be Hunter, um, then we shift to covering this team as it's currently constructed. And obviously, Travis Hunter becomes a focal point, of the coverage here from me on the Cleveland Browns. Um, I don't think this two-way player thing is going to be much of anything, or it's going to be the talking point that I think a lot of people think it's going to be. He's the number 2 overall pick. And yeah, it's great that he was a two-way player in college, but he just becomes too big of a risk in the NFL. I mean, if you think he is good enough as a wide receiver to draft him at number 2 overall, that's what he's going to do. There could be special circumstances, a once in a, blue moon. I mean, if you look at Keyshawn Johnson's career stats, he's got an interception. You look at Julio Jones's career stats, he's got an interception as well. So it's not like, other wide receivers haven't done it in, either a Hail Mary situation or late in the game, but you could just throw Hunter back there in center field as a safety and, every now and then if you needed to. I don't think it's something we're going to see a lot of, if any, early, as much as Hunter would like to do it. I just, I think the one thing is you agree with the young man saying that he wants to do it. He thinks he can do it. but also there's the understanding of it's the NFL, and it's just there's so much that's going to come at you so fast. Certainly as a rookie, certainly as a rookie drafted high with legit expectations. In my opinion, it's just not doing the best service for Travis Hunter if you're drafting him at number 2 overall to expect him to come in and play more than one position. The Carter thing, look, it's just I just can't get the idea of Carter playing with Myles Garrett out of my mind. And look, I'm an offensive guy. I was a wide receiver my entire life, played through college. It's just so tantalizing, the possibility, and just watching ridiculous world-class athletes destroy offensive lines, destroy quarterbacks, blow up running games. It's just got so much appeal. I just can't get my mind off of it. There's a good chance in 24 hours or so I'm gonna have to. I'll accept it if it happens. Again, still hoping, for my guy Andrew Berry to hook me up with some sort of, rabbit out of a hat miracle, something special that nobody actually saw coming. That's what I'm certainly hoping for. The rest of the first round, and there's always speculation about trades, certainly. Trade up, trade down. I'm certainly always waiting for the trade sideways. Let's just have something new here. You know what I'm saying? Um, could the Browns possibly involved in moving out? Look, it would take absolutely a king's ransom. But the other thing is you're the Browns and you have now invested so much time, so much effort into this number 2 overall selection. In my honest opinion, you'd absolutely have to be away, blown away to change your course now. You have put so much effort into the research on Travis Hunter, on Abdul Carter. Again, in a perfect world, there would be a quarterback there worthy of the selection, and the Browns would take that, and we wouldn't have had all these arguments and discussions that we've had for the past 4 months. Just didn't break that way for Cleveland. We know Cam Ward is solidified up to Tennessee. The Giants, it's assumed that if the Giants stay at 3, then their selection is Abdul Carter. New England at 4. And, everybody seems to think it's Will Campbell. And, I, I see it being some sort of line player, whether it is Campbell at offensive tackle or, Jalen Walker seems to be a name that's kind of getting bantied around. Mike Vrabel, I just see going, that route. It's going to be, it's going to be a trench player or it's going to be a playmaking defensive lineman. It's Mike Vrabel. It's what he does. It's what he is. It's what he likes. So you just, figure all that out. And I think everybody thinks this draft where it starts to and possibly could get a little wonky is where Jacksonville is at. Jacksonville is very much infatuated with Travis Hunter. I don't think there's ever been a surprise there. I think Travis Hunter, he's played it well, but I do think, Jacksonville is near and dear to his heart. Obviously, not far from where, he is from. He said there was a time he said that was his team growing up. I just, again, I don't see it happening. And, the Browns, I think there's just so much between these two players of Hunter and Carter. Again, unless the investment was off, the trade value was off the charts and you just had no choice but to say no. I don't see how you back off of, Travis Hunter or Jalen Carter. Certainly at this point, if you were Cleveland, we'll get that pick probably somewhere. I guess would be between 8:20 and 8:30 on Thursday night. Then we'll get our first celebration. And of course, then, whoever it is will be crowned as the next Cleveland Brown Hall of Famer. We all know how this goes. Or, he could be burned at the stake for being a bum because, this is sometimes how this fan base works. We just really, really looking forward to it, of course, and not having been a part certainly of the first round or even the first really and the second round for all this time. It's good for Cleveland certainly to be back in the draft game. How they handle it and the development of these guys is going to be crucial. I'm not saying that Barry and Stefanski's jobs are on the line by any means whatsoever, but this team, needs to get past certainly what was a terrible, terrible trade, of course, involving Deshaun Watson, and now start to get this team more, you know, rebuilt, reloaded, and hopefully, starts to become a team that contends not only in the AFC North, but in the AFC overall for years to come. We're going to continue on here. Browns 3D on the OBR. I'm excited, and we've been excited about the partnership we've had now for a few months with the State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights. If you are local to the Cleveland area, they are your one-stop shop for all things lawn equipment. Listen, you want to spend your Sundays or even your Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday, watching the Browns or watching the draft and not cutting your grass. Let the guys at State help you get your weekend back. They specialize in both residential and commercial equipment for Toro, the brand professionals have counted on for more than 100 years. Whether you are looking for a new, dependable time cutter zero turn, genuine Toro replacement parts, or expert service from experienced technicians who keep your mower in peak condition, State has got your back. They are veteran owned. The Kane family are lifetime Clevelanders. They are lifetime Browns fans and proud supporters, all of us here at the OBR. Again, if you are local to Cleveland, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights is your hometown team for all your lawn equipment needs. All their info is at statesharp.com. That is STATESHARP.com. Browns 3D continues here on the OBR. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate you all. I know everybody's getting excited. We're excited. NFL draft starts tomorrow. OBR will be streaming every pick, have analysis. We'll have Brad Stainbrook. We will have Fred Greetham. They will be at the building in Berea looking at jumping at any given time with any little nuggets that they might have for us. Pete, Brad, everybody's going to be in tow. You know what I'm saying? We're going to come out, our best bib and tucker. We got the shirts came in. We all going to be looking really good for tomorrow night. Now, certainly, so much attention and discussion has been had about the number 2 overall pick for Cleveland, and obviously, certainly so. But I think, and surprisingly, and most likely because this pick is probably tied to a quarterback selection somehow, some way, the 33 overall pick for Cleveland has gotten so much talk as well. Anywhere you go, it really, really seems to be that everyone believes that the Jalen Milroe and the Cleveland Browns thing is absolutely legit. It's not just the Tommy Reese thing. It's not just, and talking to someone today, the way they kind of described it was, is they felt that Jalen Milroe's, affection and love for the game, his work ethic. And, there's some people I talked to who said it kind of fell in line to the same kind of way Travis Hunter is viewed. Like truly passionate, truly wants to be great, truly is willing to sacrifice everything it takes to be great. And, you add in the athleticism, you add in the arm strength, you understand there is still work to be done. You understand that an ideally perfect situation, he doesn't play much as a rookie, if at all. There could maybe be a package in the red zone that may work, for a guy like Jalen Milroe. But it's all about, Jalen just continuing, and for all intents and purposes, he's put in the work this entire draft season. Footwork, getting everything in line, as far as his release, weight balance, all of that stuff. Sometimes the more athletic you are, it's just not as easy, to be, an accurate thrower within the pocket. And, certainly there has been tweaks, to his mechanics and things that have been done to Jalen Milroe to this point, where I think he's shown improvement throughout this process. And again, he is just this big ball of talent and energy and size. And there's just so much that Jalen Milroe can give you. You got to coach it up. And hopefully for the Browns, that might be an accelerated path for them with Jalen Milroe, as opposed to maybe another team who would take Jalen Milroe. Tommy Reese certainly, has the relationship with Jalen Milroe. If there are things that, Reese viewed as a deficiency, he already knows these things, could already well be on the road to having plans in place on, how and just what exactly they are going to do to improve on some of the things they think Milroe's game is currently lacking. And I think that's one of the things that makes it a little more appealing for the Browns to actually take Jalen Milroe. And it's not really, I wouldn't consider it inside information, but I would consider it, yeah, more like kind of like insider trading. You know what I'm saying? There's some things they know that other teams just unfortunately don't know. And that's what happens, when you have a quarterback going to a team, who will now have an offense coordinator who was his offense coordinator for one season in college. So again, you hope that if the Browns are the team to pull the trigger on Jalen Milroe, you hope and you think that there is a really good chance that the developmental path that many feel he has to go on won't be as long in Cleveland as it could possibly be, certainly with other teams. 67, and I kind of said this yesterday. 67, 67 could either be a wide receiver if it's Carter, or most likely a defensive end if it is Hunter at 2, of course. Running back, I know this is a popular spot for everybody to kind of put a running back in here for the Browns. And look, the names up in the top of this group are so fun. And, whether it is Travion Henderson, whether it is, Quinshawn Judkins, whether it is Hampton, I don't think the Browns are going to be players at those guys' prices. Again, I think running back for Cleveland, unfortunately for all of us fans who are salivating over this class, are probably of the understanding that it's probably something that's going to be addressed on day 3. They're still going to have the opportunity to put together a really, really good running back room, draft some really good running backs. But I believe the understanding is going to have to be, and this is certainly, one thing when you're looking at it from the analytic lens is, if it is a deep group, I'll just take 2 on day 3, as opposed to hedging all my bets on one guy on day 1, not day 1, day 2, obviously. Then you have 94, you have 104. You have to figure tight end fits in that equation somehow, some way. I think, 104 is probably where maybe you're going to get that running back. And I think it actually works out well for the Browns because you can get 4 picks handled, walk out of, walk out of the war room on Friday night, start reassembling your board. And, there's probably going to be 2, if not 3 running backs that the Browns really, really value, who, due to the depth of a really deep class, just didn't find a way to go on day 1 or day 2. So that's where I think 104 probably becomes a really significant pick for them. Then there comes the long, long break. The Browns have 5 picks in the first 104 of this draft. Then they have 5 picks between 179 and 255. And that 104 to 179 gap, which is 65 picks, is going to feel like forever and a day. That's one of those ones where you kind of just keep one eye open and you just keep watching the names come off the big boards. And, you just, you got your fingers crossed and, you'll see Kuiper's best available and that list will start dwindling and dwindling with every pick. So for now, where the Browns are seated in that spot, it's certainly not ideal. Definitely not ideal. And then you kind of look at, what can maybe done on day 3. Um, I know a lot of people want to talk about the offensive line and focus on the offensive line. But right now, as the offensive line consists, you have 4 guards, you have 3 tackles, 2 centers. That's 9 offensive linemen right there. Every single one of those offensive linemen is certainly capable of making the 53. If you want to draft another tackle, I'm all for it. I just don't think it's going to be one of the premium picks, in my opinion. I've talked about my guy Carson Vincent, Alabama A&M. He, unfortunately, and I hope this isn't going to go this way, apparently he could go a lot higher than I originally anticipated. There's people who have him as a fringe top 100 player. But certainly day 3, developmental offensive tackle. Another running back. Hopefully my guy LaQuint Allen Jr. out of Syracuse. Got to figure there's going to be some form of safety in there drafted at some point in this class. My personal favorite is Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State, but I think Kevin Winston Jr. is probably going to go in first round or the second round. And again, I just don't know necessarily how that is going to work out for Cleveland. Day 3 would also probably, consist of a defensive tackle. You hope maybe you can hit, and maybe putting hit on Ja'Whaun Briggs is a little premature, but certainly what we saw from Ja'Whaun Briggs, albeit a small sample amount in 2024, certainly has everybody waiting to see the 2025 version of Ja'Whaun Briggs. So I figured that's 4 there. I mean, I don't think you're drafting a second quarterback. It was hard enough to find one quarterback in this class, right? I don't know necessarily going to draft a second wide receiver. Certainly probably not drafting a specialist. Let's not go down that road again. Linebacker. This team always drafts corners, but right now they're 6 deep. And that's before everybody's going to try to tell me what Hunter's going to do if it is Hunter. So, you kind of get that feeling, of what these picks are going to be. Certainly a wide receiver or a defensive end, certainly a quarterback, certainly tight end, running back, tackle, another running back, defensive tackle, safety. It's kind of where it's probably headed, for this group. You're not going to rule out certainly the undrafted free agents. The Browns have done really well with that. Certainly a player like Ronnie Hickman, certainly a guy like Anthony Bell, guys who, not big time contributors, but undrafted free agents who were contributors. Mahmoud Diabate, certainly another one. So the Browns have certainly been able to handle that well and handle that with some success. As far as, the undrafted kids, they've been really good about that. Again, obviously, all eyes are going to certainly be on the AFC North, what the Browns, neighbors essentially are up to. The Browns this year will, in fact, face the NFC North as well. So, certainly eyes on what Minnesota might do, the Bears might do, Detroit might do. Certainly the host team of the NFL draft, the Green Bay Packers, might do. All things, just to keep in mind and certainly consider here. The latest buzz is that a lot of offensive linemen are going to go early. I think that's more than okay with me. I don't think the Browns were looking to go offensive line early anyway. So you want to have a run of, 20 tackles and guards. Let's rock, baby. You're noticing most of the final mock drafts are either 2 to 3 quarterbacks. Most of the mock drafts I've seen do not have Jalen Milroe going round 1. And again, I've said it a million times. And I am more than okay. I'm actually downright excited about the possibility of Jalen Milroe joining the Browns. That being said, I certainly wouldn't want to have to trade up to get him. And it's not that I don't think he's worth it. It's just that I think the Browns need all of this draft allocation that they have. So not only am I ecstatic about the possibility of getting Jalen Milroe, if I can get Jalen Milroe at 33 without having to move, without having to give up anything other than that number 33 pick that I'm going to use on him, I think it just makes the pick even better. It makes me even more excited, because you want to be able to build around the kid. Granted, it's not really the kid's turn just yet, but when it does become his turn, you want to make sure certainly that this roster is hopefully performing at a hell of a lot better than a 3-13 pace like it was last year. It was good to hear from Joe Flacco today. And, I think I kind of like the way Joe put everything. And, for those that, made it sound like this thing was really, really there, Joe Flacco didn't seem like it was really, really there. And then, Joe had basically said it, 2 weeks before it happened. If you had asked him, he would probably thought no. But I thought it was interesting that he said it was about the people here, you know, just going to try and hopefully recapture what was that magic from 2024, 2023 rather. And, did talk about certainly a young quarterback coming in. And, I don't think Joe's like really like putting himself out there in the negative way that I think some people are trying to have painted him in the past. I think when Joe says, I'm not here necessarily to tutor or mentor, I think he kind of puts that with the onus of it's the kid's job to put in the effort to learn and follow and, pick up the habits of the guy who might be the starter. And I think that's the way Joe kind of feels about it. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. It should be, the young man who's, trying to get to that spot that is doing everything he can to emulate the starter, carrying himself, as a pro, becoming part of the team, working extra hard in meetings, just the overall development of a player and a quarterback within the NFL. I'm not gonna lie. Again, I've said this a couple times now. It's really been exciting the last couple of days and the last couple of weeks and months. Not having a full draft to cover for 3 years, it sucked. Not gonna lie, it sucked. You know, trying to find, basically cutting off. Okay, well, who are the top 66 guys in this draft? Because we're not going to talk about them because they're all going to be gone. Browns have the whole palette of talent in this draft class to pick from. Very well be, could very well be, and very well most likely will be Travis Hunter. I'll shed a tear. I'll shed myself a little tear. I'll shed a little tear that it's all over. But still somehow, some way, hoping it shakes out that it does end up being Abdul Carter, of course. But again, I'm not going to waver at this point and act like I'm all pro Hunter. And I wouldn't disrespect any of you like that. And, I've rode this horse for so long. We either win the race or we lose the race. You know, it'll be interesting how it is handled by some. You know, will they remember the things of Miles Garrett is not going anywhere? Things I told you a million times. Will they remember things like there is no legit interest in Shador Sanders at number 2 overall? Will they remember those things? Because, when you do this stuff that we do here, they only remember the misses. Nobody remembers the hits. And that's what sucks. That's fine, though. You learn to roll with it. The real ones know. But, again, to so many of you, thank you. Obviously, for all the support here over the last few months. We've absolutely had a blast here. We are so looking forward to kicking this off all with you on Thursday night. So make sure you were here. Certainly, whether you were subscribed to the OBR here on StreamYard, make sure you're checking out the OBR on YouTube, the OBR over on Twitch. Make sure you're subscribed all the way around. We want you guys to be here with us. We're hoping you are all here with us. We can all kind of celebrate this together. Browns 3D on the OBR has been brought to you by State Sharpening, Mower Sales and Service. Appreciate them for joining us here as a sponsor for the off season. We will talk to you tomorrow, and you will have a special show to QB or not to QB tonight at 7 on the OBR. All of our thoughts. Check it out. Brad Ward did a fantastic job with it. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, Browns 3D on the OBR. And we will talk to you all tomorrow.